We have to learn to let go and allow life to happen through us without any judgments, without any preconceived notions, just allowing life to be what it is.
We're finding who we are. We choose between the left and right, the ups and downs, the darkness or the light. We're finding who we are.
There's only one reform in life. When you and I stop living from our heads, you and I are here for one very solid reason, and that is to learn to be loving.
We're finding our way together, just you and me.
Namaste.
Aspire.
Welcome to Aspire. We're going to work on two of the most troublesome aspects of the elements of our mind, reason and passion. Come be with us.
Higher and higher, until we finally sing. 'Cause when we seek, we find the answers. Life's a dance, and we're all dancers. Aspire, and just believe we can be everything. Aspire.
The Prophet. Of this most famous and treasured of all his works, Gibran has said, "While I was writing the Prophet was writing me." Born in Lebanon in 1883, the man who would become a famous poet, philosopher, and artist was exiled from his homeland for speaking out against the Turkish Empire. He studied art in Paris, then settled in New York City, where he remained until his death at age 48. But the Prophet lives on. Over the years, it has touched the lives of millions, a testament to the insight and wisdom of the man, Kahlil Gibran, who was never wholly and entirely of this world.
And the priestess spoke again and said, "Speak to us of reason and passion." And he answered, saying, "Your soul is oftentimes a battlefield, upon which your reason and judgment wage war against your passion and your appetite."
We've all heard of the saying, "A house divided is conquered." And I want to talk to you this morning about a house divided and being conquered with reason and passion. I'd like you to think of yourself as an inner house, a house where there are two elements of the mind, reason and passion. And I'd like you to consider with me for a moment how much of your life has been a struggle, how much of your life has been difficult because of reason and passion and the waging of war between these two elements. I want to take exception to Gibran on this particular program. I don't agree with anything he says about reason and passion. And you might say, well, who do you think you are? Well, these are my insights. You don't have to believe them. It is a popular idea to live with reason and passion and to think that a person has no other alternatives, but I disagree with that. If you will look at your life, you will see a great deal of the pain and the suffering that you go through as a person is there because of reason and passion. Reason and passion are the two elements that you and I get involved with, that when we do, we find ourselves doing things we regret, or thinking we could have done better, or feeling as though we missed a part of our life when we didn't. Reason and passion always keep us in an upheaval. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Webster's defines reason and passion this way. He defines reason as the idea of a defensive logic or a logical defense. Now, you can have a logical defense for anything that you do. You can have a reason for anything that you've done. You can take a person who has murdered another person and say in your own mind, I had a reason for doing it. We sit here in a courtroom. Is this not where we play out the acting and the drama of reason and passion? We do. And our whole judicial system is based on the idea of trying to find a reason for a person's passion to get them off the hook, so to speak, if I can use that term. Let's look at passion for a moment. Webster's defines it as overwhelming emotions. Have you ever had overwhelming emotions to do something and then found that your reason or your logic found a reason for why you should have done them, even though what you were doing was deeply self-destructive? Let me give you an example. Have you ever stolen anything? Everybody as a child, or many people as adults, have stolen something, taken something that wasn't theirs. We had an overwhelming passion, an overwhelming emotion maybe for some physical thing in our life, and we took it and we can find a reason why we did it. That is reason and passion. Yes, they're working together at that point, but they're not working together for our highest sense of integrity. Have you ever met anybody who was extremely defensive? Defensive people who would not admit or own up to their own sense of self, their own problems, their own misgivings, their own misunderstanding. Have you ever met a person who wasn't right? Everybody thinks they're right. Why? Reason and passion. And if we're all so right, why is our world the way it is? Because we engage in reason and passion, not in a way to understand it, but to kind of rationalize our life away. Rationalize the things that we have done that may have been greedy, unkind, selfish, or dishonest. I want to read to you from Gibran on this. And I again want to point out that I don't agree with anything that Gibran has to say on reason and passion. The end of Gibran's life, he was a broken man for many reasons, but maybe the major reason was his concept on reason and passion. It has been the downfall of many people in our world. Let me read this to you about reason and passion. And he answered saying, your soul is oftentimes a battlefield upon which your reason and your judgment wage war against your passion and your appetite. We all know that one. Would I that I could be a peacemaker in your soul, that I might turn the discord and the rivalry of your elements into oneness and melody. But how shall I, unless you yourselves be also the peacemakers, nay, the lovers of all of your elements? Well, that doesn't make sense. You can't love what's destroying you. You can understand it, and maybe you can make peace with it in some way, but reason and passion are tearing our lives apart, because oftentimes what we reason is not what we're passionate about, and what we are passionate about that we do reason is very destructive in our life. Take a deep look inside of yourself just for a moment. Ask yourself the ultimate question. Am I living my life out of passions and reasons that have nothing at all to do with the clarity of insight and awakening? Please remember, spiritual awakening is a very important element. It is getting beyond the mind. It is getting beyond passion and reason. It's going to the heart of us, not where there is division, but where there is oneness in us. And where there is oneness in us, reason and passion diminish very quickly, and we begin to find the heart. And the heart can be only one thing. It is love and it is life. I'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back to the second half. We're dealing with obviously reason and passion. Please remember that the whole object of meditation, of your spiritual work, is to go beyond reason and passion. That is, to go beyond your mind, to a clarity in your heart. Reason and passion wage war, make a battlefield out of your being. And if you and I have ever struggled with a decision or something that we had to do, we have struggled with reason and passion. And just because we've united reason with passion doesn't mean that what we are doing is quote unquote right. Let me just say this before I read a little more of Gibran and disagree with him. Please understand, you should not be concerned about what is right, and you should never be concerned about what is wrong. You need to be concerned about what is happening within you, how things feel within you. Many people have taken a logic and a reasoning and put it together into a plan that they felt comfortable with, only to find out that that didn't work, that it's not something that was, can I say this, wholesome or bringing about peace in their life. For example, we have reasoned out war, and we have reasoned out crime, and we have reasoned out murder, and we've reasoned out cruelty to each other, and we've said to ourselves through passion and reason why these things are right and why they should happen in life. That doesn't make them right. You have to begin to understand that there's something else within you. I think if there's anything that we struggle with in our spirituality, it's reason and passion. If you look at Jesus, if you look at Buddha, if you look deep inside their teachings, you see no reason and passion. You see very clear individuals who are working with one specific movement, and that is the movement of their heart. Jesus shows us in the Garden of Gethsemane a little reason and passion, though, doesn't he? And when he's being tempted on the mount just before he began his whole life's work, we see a little reason and passion. After that, we see a person very much attuned to their heart. Why? Because he went beyond his mind, his intellect, and his reasoning. I know a lot of us like the drama of reason and passion, don't we? And a lot of people think, what would my life be without any passion in it? Well, that would be the flame of the ego going out, and it is a very frightening thing. But I think you would find your life clear, insightful. But who am I to say? That's really none of my business. It is my effort just to make these points to you, and maybe in some way you'll meditate enough to make something happen within you, and you will see that you have other options. I want you to listen to this reason and passion. This has a lot to do with what I'm going to say to you here about why people are on drugs, do alcohol, find so many problems in their life. Listen to this. Your reason and your passion are the rudder and the sails of your seafaring soul. Boy, that isn't true. Not at all. For reason ruling alone is a force confining, and passion unattended is a flame that burns to its own destruction. Well, that's true. And if both of these elements are, quote, end quote, so destructive, what makes us think that by combining both of them together, we can make anything constructive out of either one? I don't think so. Therefore, let your soul exalt your reason to the heights of passions that it may sing. Well, that isn't going to happen. How many times have we done something knowing inside of ourselves, absolutely through reason and passion, that what we are doing is right, only to find out later on it was not only not right, it was very destructive? Again, I have a hard time with these words right and wrong, and the English language contains such a limited vocabulary. Let me just say this. We are going to suffer. There are going to be things in our life that are constructive and destructive. They're all a part of the elements of our life. But the one thing that all of us want to work with is not the idea of trying to find out what is right and live what is right, but to live in a genuineness within ourselves, to be able to close one's eyes and to listen and to hear and to feel, and then to follow what we hear and what we feel. If we do that, we transcend the mind and reason and passion. Reason and passion will play the middle against the ends. Your passion will say, do this, and your reasoning will say, do that. And then your passion will say, well, what about this? And your reasoning will say, what about that? It is confusing and it is heartbreaking. It doesn't bring us to any kind of insight. Insight comes when we are very still. We are very quiet and we simply listen. And we let the noise of reason and passion scream and yell and make their demands and make their pitches about what is right and good and bad and wrong and just and unjust. And we just listen and watch. And eventually, the isness of life, the suchness of life, the truth of life emerges. And we begin to see the path that you and I need to take. Jesus was not a passionate man. He was not a reasonable man. None of his teachings were reasonable. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are they that do hunger and thirst. Those are not reasonable teachings. They are teachings neither of passion either. They are teachings that lead us to the simplicity of our heart, where the mind is no longer a barrier. I'll be back in a minute. We'll talk about some how-tos on reason and passion. Don't go away. Welcome back to Aspire. You know, we as Americans are obsessed with the whole idea of what is right and wrong, good and bad. We have invented a religion with a book and its interpretation to try to give us the idea of what is moral, immoral, right, wrong. Here we sit in a jury box. And in this jury box, lawyers wage this war of right and wrong, good and bad, trying to sway the jury with reason and passion. It never really quite works, and it doesn't hold a lot of water if we begin to think about it, because you can be passionate about one end and think it's right, and reason it out and see why it's wrong on the other end. It confuses us greatly. And maybe that's why a lot of us face a lot of personal self-destruction in our life, because we're too busy waging the war of right and wrong, good and bad. I'm going to give you some how-tos in a minute. And what I'm going to say to you might be a little bit controversial. Let me read to you some more of what I would like to say is the insanity of Gibran on the subject of reason and passion. And again, I say this is the only thing I really disagree with him on. He says, I would have you consider your judgment and your appetite, even as you would two loved guests in your house. Okay, surely you would not honor one guest above the other, for he who is more mindful of one loses the love and the faith of both. Well, let's face it, if you have two guests in your house and you're paying attention to one more than the other, and the other one can't understand that, the other one has a problem. That one's got a problem. Let me tell you something. If the elements within us cannot stand to be alone with themselves, if they are not something that can stand the solitude of themselves in the integrity of themselves, then something's amiss. I want to give you some how-tos. This is going to be a little controversial, probably because it hasn't been talked about a great deal on television. It's often talked about, though, in spiritual terms. Here's what I want to propose to you. Don't be concerned about trying to find out what is right and wrong, good and bad in your life. Drop the whole effort of trying to find it. Trying to live from right and wrong, good and bad, is to live from reason and passion. And whatever it is that you think is right, it can be debated as wrong. Whatever you have in your reason for being right can passionately be debated as wrong. Remember that. Whatever I say is right, you can look at as wrong. Whatever you look at as right, I can say is wrong. It's a futile battle, so stop trying to live your life from the idea of what is right and wrong, good and bad. Right there, all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, we're left in no man's land. And a lot of you are probably saying, well then, how will I know what to do? What will I do with my life? How will I know what's good and bad, what to do, what not to do? Jesus gave us the insight into that. He said, judge not. Simply judge not. And that's the second thing I want to share with you. We need to keep practicing building that witness in us. The witness that looks and sees things, but does not judge them as right and wrong through reason and passion. The only part of us that ever thinks of things as right and wrong, good and bad, is reason and passion. When Jesus said, judge not, he was saying, have thoughts of reason and passion and emotions of reason and passion, but don't follow them. You are not obligated to any thought that comes to you. You are not obligated to follow it, and you are not obligated to believe in it. You do not have to follow anything that comes to you. The important point is just to see things as they are. Now, if you and I drop the idea of right and wrong, good and bad, and if we begin to judge not within ourselves, something else comes up. The only way I can describe this feeling is it's kind of a clarity that you don't have with your mind. A lot of us have lived our life totally from our minds, and therefore we've had to be told what to do and what not to do, what is kind and what is not kind, what is helpful and what is not helpful, what is destructive and what is not destructive. And that's just like a robot. You can teach a dog to do that. But when you and I begin to get in touch with ourselves, we get in touch with the spirit of ourselves. We begin to find the God that lives within us. And that is the motivator and the mover of our life. We've transcended reason and passion. It is my observation and it is my experience that people who struggle a great deal with themselves always have the struggle with reason and passion. They're not struggling with anything else other than should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I. And that whole thing makes us a battlefield. And where we are divided, we are conquered. Where we become one within ourselves, nothing can conquer us. Probably the greatest challenge that you and I face is not to let ourselves be divided, for divided we fall. If we unite within our spirit and allow love to be the presence in our life, we transcend reason and passion. Gibran died a very sad, lonely, and broken man, maybe because he lived what it is that he wrote here. He lived out of reason and passion. If you and I choose to do that, we will find our lives destroyed. We have a great opportunity in life to live out of love. Choose that over reason and passion. Namaste. Hi, I was just reading this letter that this person wrote me on reason and passion. Listen to this. This might be a question you might ask. Without reason, how do you know if you're right? And without passion, aren't you an unfeeling person? Well, let me just say this to you. It is my reasonability that makes me so unreasonable. It's what I reason in myself, what I think about in myself that's so reasonable that makes my life impossible. Think of all the things that you and I have talked ourselves out of in the form of our potential, in the form of what we could do with our life, in the form of how we have convinced ourselves that we, living the way we are, living to the potential of ourselves, when in actuality we're just really living a very small fragment in a little corner, in a little shelf of our life. Has it ever dawned on you that you're not living your totality? Maybe that's because you're logically and reasonably living your life the way you're thinking up here. And as far as without passion, being unfeeling, passion makes us unfeeling. Passion is an emotion, and there's none who are more blind, or shall I say, more adept at misconstruing feelings from emotion than those who are passionate. Just because I have passion doesn't mean I have feelings. Feelings are very different from passion. Passion makes us do things in a way that causes us great pain and suffering often. Reasoning our passions creates arguments within us. If you and I will just go to our feelings, dropping reason and passion, trusting in the silence of ourselves, we will know where to go. You know, Jesus was right. Be still and know. That's all he said. He didn't say be reasonable, think things out, logically check this, this, and this, see if you're emotionalizing it. He said be still and know. Very powerful insight. If you and I practice being still, a little quieter than what we are right now, we will know the things that our reason and our passion could never show us. Okay? Next week, we're going to talk about on pain, something that all of us face at one time or another. Plan to be with us. Namaste.